At the start of the year, I was burnt out on gaming. I had only been playing new games recently and didn't have time to go back and play old games. I spent a lot of my teenage years playing old classic games on the various online stores like Wii and PSN. Not only because for a teenager these were accessible ways to discover and play old games, they were also like $10 a piece for full and incredible experiences and not some PS3 game that was $60 plus microtransactions, which for a non-employed me was really nice and allowed me to play a bunch of games I was never able to beforehand. I obviously enjoy a lot of new and modern games, but sometimes you just gotta go back to something old and weird and pick out whatever first looks interesting to you without looking at any reviews or feedback. And I knew that to get that good old gaming spark back, I had to go and do just that. A while ago on a Nintendo Direct, one of the games shown was Legends of Mana, the fourth game in the Mana series featuring the more infamous Trials in Secret of Mana. Over the years I've heard a lot about Trials in Secret, but I've never heard anything about Legend. I had seen it before on the old PSN, but never gave it much thought, and when I saw how beautiful the visuals were in that Nintendo Direct, alongside practically knowing nothing about the game, I thought, yeah, that sounds good. Legends of Mana is a very non-traditional game that right from the beginning, if you've become too used to modern JRPGs like me, smacks you right in the face. You start by choosing your character, pretty standard fare. Then you choose a weapon, also standard fare. Then it asks you to choose a place on a map with no context or no information because that's for losers who need that. Then you actually start the game and it tells you to get out there and find some adventure and hopefully some actual context too, because we're not a charity, you're a grown adult, figure it out. It might not sound like much even when I kinda shorten and hyperbolize the opening few minutes, but when I first started I was kinda taken aback how the game just kinda flings you out there and tells you to just figure it out. Modern games are just incredibly filled with tutorials and exposition and handholding that for a game to just kick you out the door and expect you to figure it out was just weirdly enough refreshing to me. I kinda liked having to actually engage and figure out exactly what was going on with what I was playing, and all the weird things the game was throwing at me as well. There are absolutely benefits to actually being told how to do something and be given even a crumb of exposition, obviously, but the harsh contrast in the game when compared to recent ones was in and of itself entertaining. And that feeling just continues past the opening as well. The map you choose at the beginning of the game is the one you'll use for the game. Instead of having a set world, you instead use these artifacts that when placed onto the map become the areas of the game. There doesn't seem to be much rhyme or reason to choosing a specific zone, and the only strategy is that areas placed farther away from the starting zone will be more challenging. But honestly, I just placed them wherever, I had no problems whatsoever. It also reminded me of Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, a game I like a lot, and like that game, I'm into making my own little world and the feeling of seeing this world grow over the course of the game. Also, I love looking at this screen because it's absolutely filled with even more colorful nonsense you don't know yet, and it just contributes to the experience of the game just dragging you into itself. After you start, you arrive in the first town where a character comes up to you, explains the plot, and guides you to the next area. And if you believe that, you probably haven't been paying attention so far. Domina is a huge area to help you get your bearings a bit and start talking to NPCs, and depending on who you talk to and what you do, determines where you go immediately next. The way that I went my first run was running around and talking to whoever to figure out what to do and where to go next. I eventually found a merchant who needed help at the highway, which was great news, except the highway didn't exist yet. So obviously I ran to the house behind the item shop, talked to a living teapot, which eventually led to me getting the wheel to turn it into the highway. Obviously. It sounds like I dislike this, but on the contrary, I really enjoyed having to explore and just figure out where to go next on my own, and had to engage with the experience, and it plays into the game's central theme of urging the player to go out and seek adventure for yourself. Once you go to the highway, you fight some monsters, reach the end, the merchant goes, "Okay, thanks," you get an item, and that's it. Episode 1 complete. Instead of a traditional story, Legends of Mana consists of a multitude of episodes, some short, some long, and they're mostly self-contained outside of a few here and there. And once you finish most episodes, you're rewarded with a new artifact or two that gets you to new areas and in turn new episodes. So once you finish one, the game's world begins to expand and starts smacking you back and forth between different and weird adventures. I talked about how I enjoyed the opening of the game and having to figure out what to do, but this is where the real draw of Legend of Mana comes in. You never really know where you're gonna go or what's gonna happen next because the game goes all over the place, and something else that helps contribute to this is the visual design of the game is all over the place in a great way. Areas are distinct, and despite sharing the same aesthetic design, character designs across areas and episodes will be wildly different. I said that one of the things that initially drew me to the game was its visuals, and that didn't change once I started playing. It's colorful, cartoonish, dreamlike, and very clearly wanted to tap into a childlike wonder. This entire game is the summation of trying to make a JRPG that captures the wild and flickering essence of an ADHD child's imagination. It's just filled with different mini-adventures back to back with little rhyme or reason that may not always follow logic, but aim to bring the player on a journey and re-inspire a sense of wonder. I will say though, visually, for the first hour, the noticeable smoothing on the backgrounds was jarring, but the art style was strong enough that I did adjust and ended up enjoying it a lot. But still, even though visuals are one of the reasons to play this game, the core experience is still what you come here to play. And I think the best way I can really explain that is to just give a little snippet of my own adventure. After a couple of adventures, I head back to my home area and this bird delivery girl came to me and told me there were some scary pumpkins in the first town. So I went there, beat up 2 orphan magical kids causing trouble, and now they're my kids and live at my house because... Then, I go back to that spot out of curiosity, and the pumpkins are gone, but now there's an egg that becomes a little monster friend that I can take on adventures. Then, this guy stole a book from a magical university so he could destroy the world and hides in a desert where a teacher is trying to get the book back. But he ended up just playing a prank, and what he stole isn't for a weapon, but is just for fireworks. And then, to thank me for helping, a student from the magical university comes to my house and creates a place in my backyard where I can create magical instruments. And then I can take those instruments to play for spirits to get coins. And then I can use those coins for... well, you get the point. The game just bounces you from point A to Y and expects you to keep up with the pace and also just constantly throws in new scenarios and ideas. It also eventually has new episodes in old areas or multi-episode stories that branch throughout the game and just show you how this world develops over time. And the backdrop to all of these adventures is some fantastic music from a little known composer called Yoko Shimomura who did the OST for some lesser known titles like, I don't know, Kingdom Hearts and Xenoblade Chronicles, you know, just to name 2. She's honestly truly incapable of missing and always delivers with an OST that truly fits the game and what it's going for, and she was the perfect choice for this game and its many out there adventures. This all said, I am hitting the brakes a bit about talking about its adventures more than I already have, because while yes, the visuals are striking and its OST is fantastic, the main draw of this game is its adventure, and that is actually a double-edged sword. I didn't want to explain many of them outside of a snippet because its adventures are what make Legend of Mana such a fun time. So the more I show or explain, the less you have to experience for yourself. And even then, inside a fresh playthrough like I had, by a certain point the charm did start to wane a bit. At a certain point you get used to the wacky nature of the game and its magical feel, which makes everything start to feel normal and not as novel as it was at the beginning. By the final few episodes, I was kind of coasting as I was just trying to complete the game. As you do episodes, you see a seed grow throughout the game. Outside of your growing world, this is the main point of progression as it grows from a sapling to a large tree. I like when games can pull off non-direct progression because every few episodes, seeing the tree growing larger and larger gives you a feeling of motion without also knowing when the end is coming. There's always a feeling of, I know the ending is there, but when will it come? I'm not sure. There's still more adventure for me out there. But once the tree reaches a certain point, you know that finally in the next few episodes something will happen and the game will finally come to an end. But like I said, as I approached the end, I did start to get a little tired of it, and honestly, the gameplay of Legend of Mana didn't help much. It's a pretty typical hack and slash JRPG. Attack, block, and use special moves. Nothing bad, mind you, perfectly functional, but it is a bit slow and dated as well. I also made the mistake of starting with the short sword until I later changed into using a staff or greatsword. This game has a lot of weapons and there is not much balance to them. Finding something with good range and power is pretty much all you need to make it a lot easier. I won't say I didn't have fun, whacking monsters is a good time, I just didn't get fully into it. I will throw this game a bone though that I like the special moves a lot. They're flashy and have that right amount of pop without overstaying their welcome. The PS1 era was home to a plethora of over-designed moves that were made for the spectacle of the new technology with no regards for people's time. I'm pretty sure I played through this entire game in the amount of time it takes for a single Legend of the Dragoon spell to go off. But I did reach a point, however, where I just turned the gameplay off. The remake gives the option to turn off random encounters. In my initial playthrough, I rarely used this outside of episodes that required backtracking, but I did reach a point near the end where I kept it on a lot. I never really like to use this function in games because I like to play games as games, but this definitely became an exception at the end just to get it finished. I'm genuinely torn on recommending this game because the bursts of randomness and creativity in it forcing you to engage with it reignited my gaming spark, and made me nostalgic for an older time. But also any game where I have to turn off the gameplay to finish it isn't that good of a look. I guess at the end of the day, the question is, did my time with it feel worth it? And honestly, yeah, I did think it was worth my time. I can't think of another game like it, and while it did have some rough edges here and there, if I can come out of a game and think my time of it was well spent, that's what matters the most. I can't recommend it to everyone, but if you're like me and like to go back and play old and interesting games, even though they may have wear and tear, I'd say give it a look. Old games may not be as refined as many newer ones, but they have a distinct soul to them that also may not be present in newer games as well. And even if you aren't into playing, I'd still say look up a playthrough just to experience it in a different way, because its weird, wacky adventures are worth experiencing in some way. I kept this one a bit briefer than normal because I wanted to get something out as I continue to work through Digimon Survive and in general a difficult real-life work period. I also wanted to share this game because it really is such an old, rough gem that could use a bit more love and attention. Speaking of Digimon 2, once I get the Survive video out, while I will make future Digimon videos, it'll be open season for new games for the channel. So if there's any game you'd like to see me cover, leave it in the comments. I obviously can't play everything, but I'd love to see your guys' suggestions and what games you'd like to see in the future. As always, thank you all for watching. We've grown so much in the past month, and it's unbelievable, and I'm so thankful for all your guys' support, and see you next time for Digimon Survive. For real this time.